Hey everyone, how are you? And welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, welcome for the first time. I'm glad to have you on board. I never thought I'd live to see the day where I'll be talking about Artix Entertainment amongst a select few companies. Artix Entertainment is one that is based in a shopping plaza in Lutz, Florida. Its 2D flash game, AdventureQuest, was released in 2002, and over time it became a cult classic. Its popularity spawned the release and ongoing development of subsequent games, including, but not limited to, Dragon Fable, Mech Quest, Adventure Quest Worlds, Epic Duel, Hero Smash, Warp Force, Blade Haven, Oversoul, AQ3D, Undead Assault, Battle Gems, Bio Beasts, etc. If you're like me, Adobe Flash Player was the pinnacle of our childhoods. My little brother and I played Territory War like no tomorrow. We made up the most outrageous storylines using it and the AE games as an outlet. We'd spend days customizing our characters to immerse ourselves into these worlds. Before I was introduced to Photoshop, GameMaker, and Stagecast Creator, sometimes we'd make them up by printing out screenshots and assembling custom maps. And by sometimes, I mean that as an understatement. My little brother and I would do that literally all the time. It got up to the point where our mother said, uh-oh, we're running out of printing paper. We gotta get them Stagecast Creator. Whether we'd work as a team in one story and be enemies in the next, it was a way for us to remain engaged, and my relationship with him was my first major step toward getting into creative writing, starting with building empathy. As the Flash player's popularity waned due to the increased risk of malware, so did the likelihood the games will remain online for the foreseeable future. When I introduced my Let's Play Pop Tropica series a few months ago, I established that the game had gradually been ported to HTML5 so it survived Flashagaden. However, the team had to nix their older content. When or if the re-released classics like early Pop Tropica, Sharktooth, or Nabuti Islands remains unknown, but rest assured they're working hard to make that happen. Club Penguin, a popular MMO we're all too familiar with, did not and was shut down in 2017. Neither did underrated AE games like Warp Force and, drumroll please, Hero Smash. They weren't as profitable as the studio had hoped, and it was pointless to pour resources into projects that weren't as popular or compatible as they were long ago. Online games that stay fan favorites to this day, even if two were discontinued while another would receive the occasional update, were included in a standalone browser Artix Entertainment launched in mid-2018 in an effort to keep them playable, and the endeavor was a success, but the remaining staff on these games' development teams worked themselves to the bone with low pay to deliver weekly updates and delve into hit-and-miss mobile projects made on Unity. In the 2010s and into this decade, Artix Entertainment has been in a few scandals ranging from gender inequality to multiple accusations of nepotism, but I'm not going to talk about them too much in this video. I'm keeping it about its interactions with its players on social media, how it responds to criticism, and that lately, frustration with gaming companies in general is being translated to game reviewers and sometimes voice actors in the same vein that upset shoppers are bellyaching about store prices to staff or long lines, i.e. cashiers that have the least say in the matter. In other words, this video is going to be kept exclusively from a gaming industry perspective. I understand that frustration. I am a game developer, an artist, and a consumer myself. Heliotrope Journey means a ton to me. I sometimes pull all-nighters to get a blog entry posted on Tumblr, working on an ad set that I sketched a week or a month in advance, and test the gameplay in all of my upcoming updates to make sure they are working properly. I enjoy making friends with the freelance artists I commission because I love getting to know their thought process, and building trust ensures a healthy creator-client relationship. To make a long story short, I spend a lot of time writing, drawing, testing, and remotely coordinating a small team. I wanted to get into game development to tell stories in a way that books fail to, so if I put a lot of work into an installment and it's not as well received as I hoped for whatever reason, or someone notifies me that the executable won't run after it was downloaded from itch.io, I'd feel like I've been kicked in the groin. I would have to somehow either get the game to load through a zip file, or if worst comes to worst, make an entirely new one with more compatible software. It sucks to have the realization that your hard work won't last forever stuck in the back of your head, but adaptability is crucial for game development. At the beginning of last month, a well-known YouTuber named Strife tweeted a link to AdventureQuest World's upcoming Steam port and hoped for it to be an improvement. A lot of you that are active in MMOs have probably recognized him or have gotten into your favorite game after watching his review about it. He does a series of game reviews called Worst MMO Ever, which are quirky yet elaborate. He made 2 videos for that series that covered AdventureQuest Worlds and AQ3D, respectively. It's like watching someone live stream a game, talk about how cool it is, and poke fun of its flaws to keep an individual gameplay experience rich. His review of the Flash MMO, AdventureQuest Worlds in case you weren't paying attention, was mixed. He played the game since it was launched in fall 2008. Those that upgraded in the early days were given a platinum-colored dragon and a subsequent variant that was released every year for that group of players. Josh is quite proud of his founder status, and he admires the 2D design featured in AdventureQuest Worlds, which is a sentiment we both share. In his review of the game, however, he was critical of some of the gameplay mechanics. One comment he had was the lack of a save feature for quests a player is currently taking.
Now here is the single biggest issue with the game. There are lots of issues, but this is the one that sticks out in my mind the most. My quest is to kill 5 enemies, pretty simple. And every time I kill one, I get an item added to my temporary inventory. This is how the game tracks how many I've killed, but the clue is in the name, temporary. Notice how the quest is now complete, but I've not handed it in. Well, if I log out, then back in, the temporary inventory is empty, and the quest list is now blank. This game does not save your quests or your progress on those quests between sessions, meaning if you accept a long and tedious quest, you've got to finish it all in one sitting. You can't log out for 5 minutes and come back. That would reset your progress. This is the worst system in the whole game. I feel I could put forward a pretty convincing argument for this being the worst system in almost any MMO. The very idea that you can accept a quest, do the quest, then log out before handing it in and the game just forgets is insane. And remember that even accepting some of these quests, getting to the character that gives them to you, requires long and complex journeys to places in specific orders or going through long dialogue trees. It's mental to think that a proper MMO game doesn't have quest memory.
That part in his review intrigued me because it made me think, good point. They should have a permanent space for quest items. As a gamer and an artist, I always expect a program I'm using to have an option that lets me save my progress. The restore points in the Virtual Console games for the Nintendo 3DS are a lifesaver. I didn't just use it as a mulligan whenever I lose a life in Super Mario Bros. The Lost Levels. I can also use it as a bookmark so I can rest my eyes after they've been glued to the dual screen for an extended period of time, such as going on a road trip. It gives me a sense of relief when I open that game at a later date and continue where I left off. The aggravation that comes from getting stuck in a hard section is still present, but the bottom line is I don't have to start the whole game over to get to that part and try again. The option to save progress in quests was an idea for AdventureQuest Worlds that was tossed around a long time ago in the game's blog page, but at the time of this recording it was never implemented. Many quests in the game are completed within a few minutes, but when I used to grind for more than one required resource that an enemy has an iron grip on, I start to see why having to complete a tedious quest in one sitting feels like the game is purposely designed to be addictive. Maybe the development team will correct it when the game is ported to Steam. Fortunately, the developers have not gone after Josh for giving his honest opinion, but a minority of fans in that community have. Every fandom is going to have a bad apple or two that ruins it for people that want to get involved, but some like Artix Entertainments are more ravenous than others. So let's take a look at a thread where Josh interacted with a couple of them that treated him like he has the CEO on speed dial. Please be good, because I genuinely like the quirky nature of AdventureQuest. That's an expectation. Same company, same Kickstarters. This you? You'll know this company starts a lot of games and never finishes them. Ask your Smash players, said a player whose name I blocked out. Yep, that's me, Josh replied. Another player asked, this you too? We haven't even begun to talk about the excessive premium currency or spinning the roulette wheel, because gambling and premium currency pushing in this game deserves its own video. And Josh answered, yes, it seems strange to ask, this you? It's a video made by me, on my channel, with me in the thumbnail. Of course it's me. I still have strong opinions of Artix in general, but I can still hope a re-release is good, and that's an opinion he's allowed to have as a consumer. The other player replied in that thread, Hopium and nostalgia are strong drugs. I would expect the same thoughtfulness and integrity of your previous works to be reflected in a more cautionary approach, considering your knowledge makes you a very educated presenter. This is starting to go south. Josh Hayes replied, and I expect you to understand, please be good, is that exact sentiment. Yes, I agree. AE fans seem to absolutely hate anyone with anything remotely positive to say about AE. I know you've been slightly many times and are cautious, but saying this you as a gotcha! Chill, dude! And a third player chimes in to reply, we don't dislike you or hate you for your reviews. Sure sounds like it. It's just pent-up frustration of being consistently ignored despite the blatant ostracism on AE's part against Hero Smash fans, despite saying they want people looking at the game. Who could check out a game its own devs hate? Ask yourself, if a trader constantly shits all over something they're selling despite having been enthusiastic about it before, no sane customer would go and check out what they're bagging on. I think there are sellers on eBay that bring that out more than the AE, but I digress. Josh Hayes finally gets fed up and answered, games are product. If you're not getting the product you want, move on. When a game becomes a community, an identity, or a cult, then users stay far after the product stops being good. And this identity mentality is dangerous. Do not build an identity around a product. And that is an excellent point Josh made, and it's what Ready to Glare reiterated in her video about Jessie Taylor, where she commented on her mental breakdown when she lost her Instagram account a couple years back. The spleen directed at Josh is rooted to the fact that their favorite game developed by the same studio is no longer playable. It's not the only Flash game that's been nixed, but the team's current outlook of Hero Smash is consequential. This specific games hold a special place in the hearts of fans that want to see it stay alive, so to see development unexpectedly die down, and up to 6 years later, finally announce it's been discontinued, made the fanbase feel neglected. They believe it deserves better, and rightfully so, because the development staff is constantly spreading thin. But to complain to a game reviewer that interprets it as a good made for consumption will hardly bear fruit for a lost cause. You're free to weigh in your thoughts in a review if you feel you have a tidbit you'd like to bring to their attention, or if they've missed something, you can suggest a reviewer to expand on their arguments for the sake of clarification. But when you bring your feelings and the general fandom's feelings into this, such as excusing bellicose behavior as bent-up frustration, it begins to come off as attempting to skew the review. You're not going to get an accurate assessment of a video game if someone wrote a review based on how others are going to react to it, because game reviews as a whole are for gamers that want to get a second opinion so they can make an informed decision on whether the game is worth checking out. When former Artix Entertainment writer Cicero posted on Facebook in 2018 that players don't actually own their accounts in an online game, he was correct. But some of the staff at AE's management do not understand that their products are not entitled to favorable reviews. Josh tweeting that his hopes that AdventureQuest World's Steam port will be good is an expectation. Should the port be a commercial failure contrary to his hopes, he'll say so in a future review if that's his choice. That is still an opinion about an upcoming game that he has the right to express. So the way he got fed up in that Twitter thread and felt bothered by these comments was justified, and I feel pretty horrible for him. Back when Castlevania Lords of Shadow 2 was in development, I had high hopes that it would be good. I literally binge-watched the trailers multiple times, and upon coming across concept art, I fantasized for months about what the game was ultimately going to be like. The storyline, the breathtaking environments, and the option to upgrade skills for combat were fantastic when Lords of Shadow 2 finally came out. But the minimal world building, the climax leading up to the final boss fight, and the battle itself was a letdown. There's nothing wrong with expressing that displeasure either, because game reviews are naturally about what an individual gamer felt or thought of it. It's not up to the franchise's greater fanbase nor the studio behind it to intrude on and distort that. The article I'll be reading that shares this sentiment was published on Book Riot last year by Nimera Tanjim, a student studying at the University of Cambridge who is constantly on the receiving end of targeted harassment from indie authors and their fans. It's been re-released on her personal blog around the same time, or earlier than that, where she goes into greater detail about those unpleasant experiences to emphasize why it's frowned upon for authors, and in this case, game developers, to tussle with reviewers. It is bluntly yet appropriately titled, "Authors! Seriously! Please don't talk to us!" And by us, I mean the reviewers. Of course, people have said things like this before. Book Riot published an article 6 years ago saying pretty much the same thing, but that was 6 years ago! Come on! And since then, I really don't think anything has improved, so I'm here to say it again. Authors, for the love of God, do not reply to reviewers! Here's a bit of context. Since I was 18, I've been reviewing on both Goodreads and my blog every single book I've read. I'm by no means some sort of one-star troll. My average Goodreads rating is actually 3.26, which suggests I'm practically bang in the middle. But if I don't like a book, I'm not afraid to say exactly why that is, and that's occasionally gotten me some irritating interactions over the last 3 years. I'm going to describe a selection of them below, so if you're an author or a game developer reading this, you hopefully realize exactly why engaging with reviewers is always a bad idea. Let's take author Jay. It's 2019, and Jay is a debut indie author who just published her first book. It gets some rave reviews in the Facebook groups I'm in, so I check it out, only to be disappointed. Well, that happens. It's the way the cookie crumbles. I leave a 1-star review, honestly detailing my thoughts, and move on with my life. Jay, however, views my review as a personal attack. I wake up to an enraged comment telling me I'm wrong about everything. How dare I try and destroy her livelihood? She needs the money, the works. She backtracks and deletes it when she realizes I'm a teenager, but still begs me to take down my review because I'm hurting her financially, and she has a family to feed. Maybe this makes me look mean, but I say no. I wish her the best, but I'm not going to censor myself for any author. Otherwise, what's the point of reviewing books? To her credit, she apologizes and we part ways amicably. But this is what I'm going to call author mistake number 1, thinking that a reviewer's job is to say only good things so people will buy your book. That was the first time I've ever had a run-in with an author. This sounds incredibly naive in hindsight, but at the time, it did unnerve me a little. I'd only been reviewing for a year by that point, and none of the other authors I'd reviewed had ever responded. Realizing that there are writers out there who view negative reviews as some kind of personal defamation was a slightly jarring experience, let's just say that. Authors, please don't be one of them. Considering reviewers already have enough to deal with from other readers, authors should really strive to be more professional so they can distinguish themselves from the more aggressive fans. Here's Exhibit A of a rabid fan who disagreed with me.
I don't like this thing, but I like that thing. I like that thing. What the fuck? I like that thing. You know, there are people who exist that like that thing. We will not be silenced, you fucking son of a bitch! I like that thing. I like that thing. But I do like this thing. I don't like that thing. That thing fucking sucks. I fucking hate that thing. Oh!
I, and probably most reviewers on Goodreads, are used to remarks like the above. They're just other readers, or gamers. Getting comments like this seriously doesn't matter to me, but when it's the actual author or developer complaining, things become about 60% more ridiculous. I don't expect professionalism from other readers, but from the author? Absolutely! Can you imagine how insane it would be if you reviewed a kettle on Amazon and Phillips left a passionate rant about how you were hurting their livelihood? Or let's play a bonus round of that game. Can you imagine how wild it would be if Bandy left a comment on the Angry Video Game Nerd's review of Dick Tracy saying how he was ruining their livelihood? Yeah, I thought so too. The connection between reader and author is quite personal, Author K insisted to me a few weeks ago. This was a comment on my review mentioning that her book was filled with typos and poor characterization. Authors are not corporate monoliths. No, they aren't. But what some authors don't seem to have realized is that readers don't owe you positive reviews. The only thing a reader or a gamer owes to an author or a developer is a legal method of download. Whatever comes next is irrelevant. This is something Author K doesn't seem to have learned. It doesn't matter how much soul she thinks indie publishing has. If a reviewer has paid for a poor quality product, it's their absolute right to tell other people about it, even if that's in language the author objects to. To top things off, she also implies that me giving her a 2-star, not even a 1-star review, is directly responsible for her mental health issues. And here we meet author mistake number 2, one of the most fundamental errors a writer can make, conflating a book with themselves. If you're an author reading this and you only take one thing away from my article, please let it be this. Someone who criticizes your book or your game isn't criticizing you, just like if someone doesn't like your brownies, it doesn't mean they don't like you. I completely sympathize with Kay's mental health struggles, and I express the hope to her that she gets the help she needs. But, as other reviewers who themselves have mental health issues pointed out, placing the blame upon the reviewer is deeply unfair. If you know reading reviews isn't a good thing for you, don't do it! It's truly that simple. I know many authors who don't read the reviews for this exact reason. Sometimes, even when an author doesn't directly interact with a reviewer, their behavior can be so incredibly unprofessional that it still reflects badly on them. And here's the article that was published 7 years ago now. Holy moly, time flies. It was written by part-time English professor Brianna Clark Gray, which is titled, Dear Authors Don't Respond to Goodreads Reviews. Another day, another classic Goodreads author meltdown. What else is new? Someone gave self-published author Dylan Saccoccio a 1-star review, and Saccoccio, predictably, as Goodreads veterans are well aware of, went apoplectic. His account has been banned, so you can't really see his comments anymore, though you can still see some of them in a satirical article on how to become a famous author. And take a look at the archive thread in the links enclosed, because everything he wrote was ridiculous and abusive. Goodreads reviews are nothing if not dangerous stuff, folks. Props, by the way, to reviewer Kate's composure through the whole thing. I've talked about before how this kind of behavior led me to quit Goodreads, and the gendered stuff I was talking about in that post echoes a similar dynamic here, with a male author attempting to shout down a female reviewer. But there's another dynamic at play that we need to talk about. Authors, regardless of their intentions, should not be responding to reviews on Goodreads. Not everyone is going to like your book. If they post an honest review, even if it's blatantly wrong, or you don't agree with it, or it hurts your feelings, or you think they're a big stupid butt face with a butt for a face, or happen to have Pepe the Frog as their Twitter avatar for all I know, you just have to breathe and move on. Breathe and move on. You know who looks terrible in an author versus reviewer shouting match on Goodreads? The author. Always the author. Because an amateur reviewer on Goodreads, even if they post an awful screed, has nothing to lose in the situation. Even when the author isn't behaving in a completely unhinged fashion, as in this latest example, the author is the one with the professional identity to uphold. When it does go off the rails as badly as we all know it can, it's the author who will lose sales and face. I've never heard of Saccoccio before this weekend's confrontation, but you can bet I would not feel comfortable picking up his book because he has made it unsafe to speak publicly about his work, and he's made himself look, frankly, dangerous. But it's not just the 1 or 2-star reviews. I also don't think authors should respond to positive reviews, even to say thanks. The dynamic is too bizarre. Perhaps not all reviewers feel as I do, but I think the reviewing space needs to be its own thing, unadulterated by the feeling of the author's hot breath on the reviewer's neck as they try to make an honest assessment of the work in front of them. And here's a similar incident that happened to a player when they left a 1-star review on AQ3D's Google Play page. Captain Chuckles, I think, Captain Chuckles tweeted, Artix Entertainment has deleted 2 of my attempts at leaving my 1-star review of AQ3D. Let's see if they let me post this one, or if I have to get in contact with Google Play support team about if the review manipulation is allowed. Review manipulation? That's pretty interesting. And it's a little blurred, but here I can read, a grinding mess of an MMO ran by a narcissistic CEO with a long history of condoning workplace harassment. Take your time and money elsewhere. That's a little short and blunt, and I'm not a big fan of the use of the word narcissistic in that sense because it has a very specific meaning in psychology, but who knows, I don't work behind the scenes. And the developer responded to it. This person tried again and said, terrible grinds, recycling of assets, and very slow drip feeding of story content, uses cross-platform and daily login loot boxes as a crutch to boost player numbers. And they edited the response with, the devs are working hard to improve the game. It has been cross-platform since it entered open beta in 2016 and has had daily chests for years, just like many MMOs have. Yes, that's true, but I also don't think that response was a bit necessary either. And to my right, you could see the first attempt a little better. And in my next slide, you could see this review. You could see this review a lot more clearly, which reads, it's too grindy and lacks any meaningful endgame content past collecting your favorite cosmetics. They also recycle and recolor armor assets a lot, which is a pet peeve of mine with MMOs. I quit after realizing the only reason I was launching the game was daily logins. I've had my last 2 1-star reviews quietly deleted by the company. The first was understandable as it was angry and rudely worded, and I do apologize. That's good. However, please let me leave this one up at least. Thank you in advance. At least we have this screenshot in case they delete it, but let's talk about that in the slides, shall we? If your studio is 100% funded by the fanbase, ignoring negative reviews is riskier advice to take because if you want players to continue buying your product, you have to make sure their voices aren't being ignored. Based on the behavior we've seen earlier in this video, it's perceptible that it's easier said than done for Artix Entertainment to do. If someone posted a positive comment about an installment in the Heliotrope Journey series on my channel, Itch.io, or my social media pages, I would respond to something like, thank you so-and-so, I'm happy you enjoyed it. Or if I see someone post a negative comment and I'm in a good mood, I would reply something like, I'm sorry you had this problem, thank you for letting me know. Sometimes I make a joke about it and say I'll get this taken care of in the next update. Usually it's if someone notices a typo or the difficulty level is so high the game is unplayable. A friend of mine compared the difficulty level of some of my games to Simon's Quest. It's pretty flattering, actually. Sometimes I ask, what can I do to make this better? I still have much to learn when it comes to programming, but it's good to have that feedback documented so when I do get better at it or hire a coder who's better at it than I am, then I could show them so they know it needs to be fixed. On the other hand, what you don't do as a community support team member is quarrel with this player, force them to change their mind about how their company does business, nor do you get defensive and instigate a witch hunt against them. Without a doubt, that just makes the situation entirely unethical. It causes players to question the studio's honesty, and it prevents them from leaving honest feedback. Some might stop buying their products altogether in protest, and worse, it hurts our profession as artists in the long run. That's why there are so many fandoms that are at each other's throats. This might just be an algorithm issue or a bot picked up on a terms of service violation because developers are not allowed to delete reviews from Google Play and Steam. But if the studio is abusing the flagging systems to get these platforms to remove reviews they don't like, it becomes a red flag that future customers are going to be misled into buying a crappy game. The review pages are obviously not the only places for players to leave feedback and share thoughts. Most of them take to social media and are especially invited to contribute to a game's development process in a studio's official Discord server. Some developers feel it's more convenient to file a bug report than post about it in a review page and/or social media. There's no right or wrong way of doing either of the above because talking about a glitch that's disruptive to someone's gaming experience still counts as an honest interpretation of a video game, Bug reports are just easier for a development team to organize and address compared to thousands of tagged posts that one of their members might miss when they check their feed. They shouldn't hinder someone from including it in the review if they choose to, because strictly speaking, product reviews are for the customer. Video game reviews are for gamers, not hardcore fans of that franchise. I learned that advice from the best. Open communication between staff working with a studio and players/paying customers is also crucial to a video game success. Staff and volunteers of Artix Entertainment that use social media are well aware of the concept of constructive criticism. It's not a secret that they openly encourage it in their communities and sometimes allow a select group of dedicated players to test unreleased products. It promotes inclusivity, engagement, and it gives people another reason to enjoy the games. It is up to the creative director for each game, however, whether to consider it or ignore it altogether. The development teams can't have time to honor everyone's feedback, and most people are mature enough not to expect it right off the bat. Feedback that takes priority, though, is a game crashing after a recent update and revising a character whose name has a negative implication, as with the case of an ethnic slur, Sand Monkey, that was brought to the Chief Operating Officer of AE's attention midway through last month. Someone tweeted to her that the slur used as a name for an enemy encountered in a desert-themed zone was used to dehumanize civilians in the Middle East during the First Gulf War. The COO apologizes for the grievance, and in less than an hour, the enemy's name was changed to Oates Monkey. I oddly had no idea that the slur existed until I found that thread, so that was something new I learned that day. Principally, no one is owed an explanation on why their idea didn't make the cut, but when it comes to customer disputes, they are entitled to a reason why they've been stripped of in-game or Discord privileges and what rules they violated. Nythera, the current head of the game's customer service department and community lead, is typically courteous and reasonable in her replies when dealing with disputes by email, but she's just as prone to acting unruly as the users she communicates with on a daily basis. 3 years ago, she, along with a few moderators and staff of the studio's community Discord server, kicked out a couple of players that were causing a major ruckus. They claimed that the reason for this ban was that they were critical of their products and it took effect without warning. I do not know what drove Nythera to step in, given that she wasn't tagged in the conversation when they tweeted about the ban. It could have been from her own volition, or a member of staff involved asked her to weigh in, which is relatable if you're dealing with an angry customer and you're unsure how to get them to calm down, so you ask someone with that experience, like a manager, to help you out. It happens all the time in retail, and there's no doubt that the staff behind the game you rooted your entire welfare to risk being on the receiving end of similar incidents. It's a reason I can't draw the line between the internet and real life. It's a complicated situation where I sympathize with what both sides are arguing, and I want to talk about why, from a PR standpoint, Nythera opened a massive can of worms by responding to this player's rant. So here's the thread where this interpersonal interaction all started. The tweets are not listed in a particular order, but as you can see, the most recent ones are at the bottom of each screenshot. I haven't included every tweet in that thread, but they should paint a vivid enough picture of how quickly this interaction got ugly. Before Nythera stepped in, the developer interacting with this player was trying to explain that the company typically does not comment on individual cases and must be discussed privately with player support. When Nythera did step in, she was visibly upset that this player attacked another developer for allegedly enforcing this ban, when according to her, it is never usually one person who then decides on a serious ban, and that I can believe. I totally understand defending a colleague when they've inherently done nothing wrong and they were just doing their job, but I personally think that Nythera should have stopped engaging with this player after she directed him to respond to a reply to a ticket that he sent to player support. I'm going to have to agree with Nythera on how the company's revenue doesn't come into this issue. When you purchase secondary currency and a membership in an online game, you don't own a physical or digital copy of the game like you do on Steam and home consoles. What you're basically paying for is additional privileges given to you by a service that free players are licensed to use. Only their feelings after seeing you buy an item they can't afford can range from admiration to envy. What I don't agree with, however, is that Nythera got defensive when the player she was arguing with implied that AE only cared about the profits they're making from their products. That, to me, is just going to alienate players that can't afford these benefits and encourage this idea. Gaming journalists and academic scholars have already compared online mobile games hounding players to buy an expensive package to recreational gambling. There was even some talk in the government about regulating that too. While watching this section of Joshua's review of AdventureQuest Worlds, I could see how slightly similar its in-game advertising is to Game of War Fire Age and Raid Shadow Legends.
If you do manage to finish a quest, you'll usually get an item. To the game's credit, each item does have a different visual appearance. Equipping anything changes how you look, but here's a major thing the game does to convince you to become a paying monthly member. Certain items or equipment can only be used by members, and trying to equip it will show you this, the upgrades screen, and the game has no problem just showering new or free players with members' items to irritate them into upgrading. There's nothing worse than having an inventory full of awesome stuff you're not allowed to use. If you do want to upgrade, it's $58 for the year or $20 for 3 months. I mean, it's cheaper than most MMOs, but it's not exactly nothing.
The latter is a mobile game that I got into after seeing an advertisement on YouTube commemorating its 3rd anniversary. It offered new players a code that gave them near unlimited energy and a swordswoman named Talia to recruit as a champion amongst other rewards. I mostly check in to get the daily login perks before I get back to work. In fact, I can play the game while doing my work because it can enable an option that allows it to play itself. Battles are automated, and even if I lose, I am still rewarded with a small amount of in-game currency. It's grinder-friendly, and the Darksider-style graphics are to die for. I recommend it for people who aren't gamers and have busy schedules but love dark fantasy as a genre. I am, however, annoyed by how in-game ads are shoved in my face each time I return to its hub town to level up my champions and upgrade their equipment. I have compiled some screenshots of advertisements to give you an idea that some of them are tempting enough to buy. In the same vein, AdventureQuest Worlds prompts new players to upgrade to a paid membership straight away. Otherwise, the Dragon Hero armor set offered to them will vanish for good after 72 hours unless they make a new account when they've made their decision. That's a bit of pressure to put on a newcomer, isn't it? Anyhow, Artix Entertainment is not a company that pushes a pay-to-win formula on their products in the same vein Game of War Fire Age has and continues to do today. I first downloaded that game to keep me entertained during downtime in between classes back in community college and tried it again midway through last month. I was curious to see if Machine Zone made any improvements to the game that would give free players a fairer advantage within the past 7 years. None of the reviewers were kidding when they said they were hounded by in-game ads. Game of War was the biggest waste of my time because I had high hopes that it would be a Greek mythology-themed MMORPG that's similar to World of Warcraft. It was the impression I got from watching live-action advertisements of the game starring model Kate Upton as the goddess of wisdom, Athena.
But you must not delay. Plan quickly. Build quickly. Or be destroyed quickly. Will you build an empire that lasts forever? Will you be my hero? Game of War. Play for free now from the App Store.
It turned out to be a simulation where players built their own cities but had to log in every hour on the hour to build a research facility, an armory, a farm, or a quarry as quickly as possible, or that a wealthier player invaded their territory. Machine Zone's budget went toward their marketing campaign for the game than the actual development. Perhaps this player clashing with Nythera blew it out of proportion when he accused Artix Entertainment of bleeding customers dry. He wasn't entirely incorrect because even in AdventureQuest Worlds, limited time in-game items do exist exclusively for paying customers. A member of staff might argue that it's a way of saying, "Thank you for playing our game and supporting us." It's a sentimental way of looking at it if the community is like a family to you, and I know it makes you feel appreciated, but a heavily promoted gilded premium armor that's only on sale once in a lifetime is still a cash grab nevertheless. But if it's an item you've been looking forward to getting during the duration it was available, you wanted to do something nice for yourself, and you can afford it, then that's awesome! Good for you! This permanent ban drama then reignited a month later with the issue being brought up again by a community member when it became public knowledge that a few generous donors requested that the staff treat themselves to bagels for breakfast. Again, Nythera should have just tweeted something witty in a reply like, "Bagels don't automatically make our games better, but they give us the nourishment we need to be productive so we can make them better. We can't work efficiently on an empty stomach, you know." And left it at that because her subsequent replies in that thread made her look officious. I'll be reading a couple more paragraphs in Namera Tajim's article to support the reason why an individual's dispute with player support is no one else's business and why Nythera should not have acknowledged it out in the open. This friend, at Author K's instigation, has actually left a furious comment on my review before, hence why she thinks she's already told me off. Believe it or not, both the author's posts and this person's comment were public. I show you these things to reinforce the fact that even if you think the reviewer you're moaning about won't see it, you should always maintain a professional aspect in public. Because I did see this, and once I verified the fact that they were talking about me, I included it in my review of K's book. You may wish to challenge me now by reminding me of the old axiom that there is no such thing as bad publicity. Maybe an author or a studio doesn't care what kind of publicity they get, but in the book or game development world at least, I believe that's only true up to a certain point. Yes, a reviewer or a gamer might slate a book or a video game for having too much sex or too much violence, and that would drive another gamer to buy it straight away. But if a reviewer publicizes the fact that an author has gone after them for stating their honest opinion, people are a lot less willing to reward that behavior. I've personally had people tell me that they will no longer buy Author K's books just because I publicized the things she said to or about me. Yes, there's more than just that screenshot above, so it really is in an author's best interest not to engage with a reviewer in any way, even if you don't agree with what they said. Again, the interpersonal interaction between this player and the staff that enforced the ban is a complicated situation that I don't claim to know everything about, nor do I know who was in the right. It's because our only knowledge of the incident is from what the individuals involved and outsiders have tweeted about it. There was a lot more that was going on than what we've seen, and to me it's better not to know the full story. To be honest though, both parties were in the wrong. I definitely think the permanent ban was justified because this player's public conduct may be how he was behaving in the official Discord server as well, and the members of staff involved had every right to remove this player, but all I know for sure is that based on the fact they lost a loyal customer and indirectly divide the community further, they shouldn't have publicly acknowledged his tweets in the first place. Sour interactions with the team behind the games you grew up with can lead to feeling like you weren't wanted, and of course you are free to talk about it, but it doesn't excuse taking that frustration out on Josh Hayes. He's not interested in whatever drama is stirring in that community or behind the scenes. He did make his interactions known to his greater fan base, hence why most of them aren't taking their complaints seriously. There's a bit of mockery of Artix Entertainment's fandom shortly after the interaction in the thread I showed you earlier in this video, and I will never condone that, but some of these fans go to extreme lengths to hold on to what they believe made Artix Entertainment amazing, even if it means antagonizing someone that wants to be a part of, currently involved with, or critiquing the studio. They're fortunately in the minority of the community, but on social media, they are the noisiest people. It's hardly uncommon in fandoms dedicated to more popular gaming franchises. This brings me to talk about a similar incident in the Sonic the Hedgehog fandom last spring, where someone tweeted that comedian Ben Schwartz portrays Sonic better than Roger Craig Smith, his current actor in the games. Why get worked up about a personal preference? It's a billion-dollar question where the answer lies in common sense. None of the actors behind the blue blur need to know that their talent is inferior to the other, particularly not according to their characters' fans. So far, I've only been talking about players and developers clashing with one another in the indie communities, because that's where a bulk of this drama is tied down to. A lot of studios like Artix Entertainment don't have spokespeople to clear the air when there's a scandal, so the developers believe it's their responsibility to do it out of concern that harsh criticism may deter future customers. However, some multinational conglomerates put their reputations at risk by allowing fans to become involved in their communities. Sega was one company that tested the waters by inviting a millennial developer to port some of its classics to mobile. Prior to getting in contact with them, he was a popular user that made fan games and showcased them on Sonic Retro. His port of Sonic CD was such a hit that he was commissioned to develop mobile ports of Sonic 1 and 2. Most of Sega of America's current staff started out as some of Sonic's biggest fans. With the help of juggernauts like Aaron Webber, it revolutionized the franchise's marketing on social media in addition to strengthening Sega's relationship with its core audience. Voice actors that have portrayed Sonic the Hedgehog came and went. Counting Japanese voiceovers, he has had up to 55 people lend him his voice, with Jason Griff as his most iconic and recognizable. Roger Craig Smith currently portrays Sonic in the video games, like I said earlier, while Ben Schwartz portrays him in the critically acclaimed Paramount film series. Both actors have a good relationship with one another in real life. The pair run into each other at one point in a recording studio in Los Angeles and posed for a couple of photos taken by Sam Rigo and Eric Bauza. I think that's how I pronounce his last name. A fan account shared one of them last April that captured the wholesome experience. As a fellow Sonic fan myself that has an eye for photography, I actually think it's stirring to see for myself. Then someone had to spoil the moment by tweeting the comparison in question. Less than 10 minutes later, Roger took notice and told them off in a reply. Note that both actors were tagged. Ben Schwartz is a better Sonic than Roger. And Roger replied, "You're making an on-kind reply aimed at me while tagging my profile. Notice I've not replied to everyone in this conversation because it takes a simple step to remove the other profiles from my reply. You chose not to. Is your intent to be a dick on the internet? Try reading that in Sonic's voice." It sparked intensive backlash toward this user almost immediately. The heat who was getting was so intensive that he privated his Twitter account for a couple of months so he wouldn't have to face the rest of it. A major of succeeding tweets expressed consolation for Roger, while some were agitated that he called this player out in the first place. To them, it's just an opinion that Ben Schwartz is a better fit for Sonic than Roger could ever be. To say that an actor's talent is inferior to another while tagging their handle is like saying Burger King is a better restaurant to go to than Wendy's, with both of their social media handles tagged. True story. There's always a good chance Wendy's will be nastier to you than Rogers, as we can see on our right, but you are asking for trouble by tagging them. I am aware that there are a lot of people in the Sonic the Hedgehog fandom, Artix Entertainment's fandom, or any community that are so detached from reality that they assume they are off the hook by saying, "Bro, it's an opinion, don't get worked up about it, chill." But when you're actively bothering someone that did nothing wrong, when you're pushing a rhetoric that alienates a group of people, when you're trying to convince people that your way of thinking is the only way with no rational evidence to explain why, it stops being an opinion and it starts being a dick move. It doesn't fucking matter that someone's following is bigger than yours and that their income is bigger than yours. Take all that away from a public figure, and a middle school student with a quarter of a brain will tell you it's straight up bullying. When that happens, it invites criticism, and that does mean I am going to mock your point of view. I'm not going to willy-nilly mock you as a person, but I am going to make fun of your beliefs, and that sometimes means I'll do a short skit or a childish impression of you to get my point across about how your credence is dead from the neck up. Later that same evening, one of Sega's social media coordinators, Kate Kronsowski, tweeted her concerns about the mistreatment of actors from their fans. She honestly spoke the words right out of my mouth when she said that tagging people directly does more harm than good, and it emphasizes the fact that intentions rarely match repercussions. Hey everyone, just a friendly reminder that there's real people behind the content you engage with. Seeing rude and inappropriate behavior, especially directed towards our amazing voice talent, is very disappointing. Regardless of your opinion, please be more respectful. We work with so many amazing people who support one another and do so much to bring our stories and communities to life. Even if you disagree, tagging them directly achieves nothing but hurting them, whether or not that's the intent. Kindness and respect go a long way. Bravo! Bravo, Katie! Great job. You definitely spoke the words right out of my mouth, and you have my respect. Her statement was quickly assumed to be a response to that incident, but Katie said in that reply that her statement didn't have anything to do with it. She basically debunked that. It's an enormous issue that's not exclusive to a singular fandom, though I think we went over that already. Look up the racist not my Ariel hashtag on Twitter, and you'll find that it's worse. Here are two major key differences I noticed when I compared how both Artix Entertainment and Sega communicate with their respective fan bases. One was that the tweet Roger was tagged in was a personal attack, even if it was just a random person saying what his preferences were and it was just an opinion. That's how Roger interpreted it. This fan doesn't get to decide what his reaction was. The other is that Katie was careful with her interactions when pressed for questions. She refused to engage with impassioned players that were trying to rationalize teasing a public figure. Her position at Sega bears so much responsibility that it allowed her to recognize that calling a single person out publicly solves nothing. I have tons of respect for her because I've always seen her as a tech-savvy person that loves her job, and she shows genuine enthusiasm whenever she is promoting Sonic-themed content. To see her step in to remind fans to find humanity in the voices behind their favorite characters was heartbreaking. The way she maturely voiced her sadness, though, still brings out her love for the Sonic franchise. And Roger Craig Smith is a lovely person. I spoke with him several times in meet and greets at GalaxyCon Live, and I always admired that he was so chill when I was not feeling quite like myself. It allowed me to open up to him a little more, and I really felt that connection. It didn't stop people from continuing to speculate and continue to go after Roger for defending himself. Katie's statement didn't make the fans' hostility vanish, but she didn't entertain the idea that the antidote to bullying is additional bullying. Now that's how you do your job as a social media representative of a brand you're affiliated with. That's how you stand up for the people you care about and gain admiration from fans and colleagues alike while staying professional. Artix Entertainment sadly hasn't done much better with showing its team members the same kind of compassion. They've been trying to, all things considered, but just trying is barely enough. I noticed while scrolling through reviews of AQ3D on Steam, there were a handful of polite replies to negative reviews that reassured the public its game staff is addressing the issues to the best of their ability as the development process advances. But some, like the screenshots of a review I shared, I think should have been left alone. What's terrifying to me about this mess is that I still can't stand criticism. I may not shy away from it as much as I used to because I understand there are people with different perspectives that's going to see my projects in a light that I don't agree with nor am I familiar with. I welcome it now on my channel, Tumblr blog, and itch.io page because it might give me new ideas that could suit Heliotrope Journey's dark fantasy genre. If I continue to have the same problem I overcame in my art classes, my graphic design teacher often joked that she pulled my teeth whenever she critiqued my work, and I always found it to be hilarious, and the joke kind of allowed me to grow. It's going to stunt my growth as a developer. Hopefully, Artix Entertainment can do more of that in the future, but unless it does, it's unlikely its customer support team and the management on occasion will understand that while they are passionate about the games they currently update weekly, other players may not share that sentiment. It's just like how a bulk of the fan base is unwilling to shrug off the scandals the studio had been plagued with in the last decade. Talk about three sordid incidents that were caused by communication breakdowns between management in addition to the alleged nepotism and gender discrimination. 7 years ago, a volunteer programmer that devoted up to 70 hours a week of his time decided to leave after asking for a cut on several occasions when he was on the verge of homelessness. He worked with Dragon Fables and MechQuest development teams simultaneously, and the combined responsibility took a toll on his physical and mental health. When he provided a document of the hours he put in when he made that request a subsequent time, the management relented, and as a temporary solution, they offered him a monthly salary that paled in comparison to his income from his other jobs. He was forced to decline the offer and tweeted a link to a Google Doc that I'll leave in the description below, where he typed a goodbye letter to the community. Players and staff alike were supportive of his decision, but it quickly went south when this programmer was penalized for sharing that document because management took it as a slight against the company in a deleted open letter. Since then, his access to development tools were taken away. The programmer's treatment, in spite of his self-sacrifice, was not well received by the fanbase, and supposedly it's part of the reason why Artix Entertainment decided that all developers working with them must be compensated. I know the COO stressed on Twitter that volunteering is supposed to be a fun activity and real life must always come first, but this programmer knew how much people loved the games he was contributing to, so if he were to take a break at any point, fan bases dedicated to these games would feel let down. In March 2019, trigger warning for sexism. An office assistant was let go for an undisclosed reason in a verbose statement the studio issued on Facebook. A year later, a woman that claimed to hold that same position posted a horror story on its Glassdoor page that adds weight to the aforementioned allegations. This led community members to speculate that this person and the staff member that was let go are the same person. Another trigger warning for sexual harassment or harassment in general, because this is only going to get worse from here. What happened to her was that she was romantically involved with a coworker, and another who was well liked by the team, to put it mildly, was envious of the relationship. He hinted that he would get her fired, was rude to her in most if not all of their interactions, and she ended up doing his work for him. She reported his conduct to the management again and again and again. They did nothing. They made empty promises that he would be talked to, but absolutely nothing was done about it. They let that conduct slide while she was constantly being treated like a maid at an inhumanely low salary. In other words, she was put through hell, and the employee she assisted as part of her job got away with it. More recently, at the beginning of last May, one of AE's community managers resigned after enduring harassment from a male coworker for several months. She was put on paid leave for a month prior to her resignation after coming forward, while the latter was demoted to a lower-level position as a consequence. Although the studio stated it is addressing deeper issues related to the situation, to send this person on leave because she refused to work in the same space as a harasser comes off as retaliation, and it leaves a bad taste in my mouth. That's not how a bigger company would sort out that issue. These incidents were aggravating to read about, and I was disappointed that they were poorly addressed. Honestly, if players don't want to support the studio anymore after learning about these events, I don't blame them, but please leave Josh out of this. He's only here to review the products as a gamer. Thank you so much for watching. Let me know what you guys think, and keep an eye out for my review of Colton Hines' memoir, Miss Memory Lane. Have a good weekend.